Today's episode of Vice Versa, we're talking about how many Cadillac dealers don't want to sell electric cars, Tesla and the right to repair, Tesla giving the deadline to the Roadster referral discount winners, like myself, Toyota's all-new electric SUV, and an EV that can go 1,000 miles. And today, I'm joined, as usual, by my partner in crime, Ricky from 2-Bit Da Vinci. How you doing, Ricky?
Thanks, Matt. And thank you for rubbing in your Roadster in my face. I appreciate that.
That's what I'm here for.
So let's get started and talk about the first topic of the day, which is that Cadillac, as of now, and this is a follow-up to a story we did 2 episodes ago, where Cadillac was offering to buy out GM was offering to buy out the Cadillac portion of various franchisees. And so far, they have taken up 150 people on the offer. So we brought this up 2 weeks ago because this is a story that the way the press had covered it made it sound like GM was kind of bailing and they were trying to offload their Cadillac division and stuff. But really, I think what it showed was we are building EVs and you can get on board or not, but we're going to go full speed ahead. And clearly, 150 people so far have decided they don't want them. And I was thinking about why that might be. So Matt, think about this. If, let's say you're a prospect buyer and you go in to buy like a Chevy or a GMC or a Cadillac, and now there's a Lyriq or whatever that ends up being that's electric, and someone goes to test drive it, and oh, that's electric and those are back ordered. They're not going to be available for 6 months, but we'll take your $100 deposit today. So they're losing customers potentially. So there might be a reason why they don't want that. And especially I predict that GM will not be as profitable on Cadillac and the EVs for a while, especially when you got Tesla. So trying to be price competitive, I think they're going to have to really eat into their margins. And so what they're telling their franchisees, the dealers who sell their cars, is, I know you thought you'd get a couple of thousand when you sold each car. What if we told you you're going to get a couple of hundred for a while? No one's going to want to go for that. But all that said, GM's going ahead, and they've bought out 150 people from the reason for the need to have to sell EVs.
Yeah, it's to me, when we talked about this before, it was kind of like I didn't know if it was a right thing to do, but it is kind of a good thing for them to transition as many of these people out of the picture as they can. And in the article, it was reported that most of the ones that exited have more than one dealership. So they also have Chevy, Buick, or GMC, and Cadillac wasn't the lion's share of their business anyway. So moving out of that business for them was not a loss at all. But for Cadillac, they're actually gaining more control over their future destiny, which is a good thing. So I think in the long run, this is going to be the right move, but it's still an awkward thing we're watching play out right now.
Yeah, long term, I think they're going to have the control they need, and other people should be kind of watching what they're doing in terms of how to do this. I'm sure they're not the only ones having this kind of moment. So yeah, it's good to see that they're doing it, and hopefully that means that in the future we're going to have more EVs and other people will follow suit.
Yep, absolutely. So next up is Tesla releasing the service manuals, diagnostic tools, and more for free. And this is part of the whole right to repair movement. And for me, in Massachusetts, I think I brought this up in a previous episode, here in Massachusetts for the election, there was a vote for the right to repair that would force dealers and car makers to allow access for third parties to the diagnostic tools. And in Massachusetts, it passed with a pretty high margin. So this does not shock me because it's the law now in several places around the world. So they kind of had to do this. But what I found the most interesting about the story was this was discovered by a hacker of the Tesla community hacking group. And they discovered that to get it for free, you have to register on the Chinese Tesla service site to get in for free. But for the US version, you still have to pay something like $100 or something like that to get in, which is really, really strange. But once you're in, you can access it from the US site as well. And you have access to the diagnostic tools and all that kind of stuff. So for me, this is pretty exciting. I'm glad that they're doing this.
Yeah, I think you mentioned $100. Isn't it $100 per hour, I thought?
Yes.
For 1 hour?
It's $100 per hour.
Yeah, it's not an affordable thing. And by the way, I think the 2 gripes I've historically had about Tesla, I love Tesla. I'm a huge fan, big investor in their stock. But the 2 things that bug me are FSD price hikes, which we've talked about before. And the second thing is the right to repair aspect, right? Apple, which I also am a fan of, sell $1,000 things, and if you can't repair those, that's one thing. But a $60,000 item that I can't repair is a different kind of a thing. So really good news. It shows you that Tesla kind of comes out and says, "Hey, we hope you'll say no to the measure," which didn't happen. People in Massachusetts did vote for it, which bravo. That's one of the cool things about the state, and they'll play ball. Interestingly, I think the reason for the Chinese aspect, where they had to come in from like a Chinese domain or like a VPN or whatever that was,
Yeah.
I think is because if you think about how China operates, for you to sell a car in China, you have to have like a subsidiary in China. China's like incredibly like controlling about their economy. Tesla's one of the few examples, I can't actually think of another, where they don't have Tesla of China LLC or something. Like they don't have that. They sell cars in China as an American company, which is kind of cool. So maybe this is one of those deals that they brokered and said, look, we'll really open up repairs and maintenance, and we'll allow Chinese companies to do all the repair work, and we'll have a big network and make it totally like transparent. Maybe that was part of the deal, because yeah, it's an American company selling these cars, but we'll still grow our economy with repairs and maintenance and stuff.
Right. Cool. Well, you want to go to the
But a
next
good
story?
move.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely a good move though. All right, this one I'm not jealous at all. I'm not an envious type. But Mr. Farrell has a Roadster. I do not. I always tell my wife I kick myself for not having bought my Tesla sooner. Because if I wasn't stupid and I just bought it a year earlier, I'd have one too. But this is probably exciting and good news, especially for a lot of you guys. There's probably some people in this chat right now. I know you are, and there's a lot of people in the community who are in line to get that referral Roadster. And so what they're showing is they kind of had this deadline, like, hey, do you want your Roadster or not? And they're showing up on people's boards. Do you have your Roadster on your list of vehicles now?
I do. Yes, I do.
I hate you. I mean, you're a good friend. You're a good person. Yeah. So what this tells me is, are they like preparing to make the Roadster? I'm kind of curious about that. To my mind, I was thinking the Y is, ramping up. They've got Cybertruck, which probably is a larger volume thing than Roadster. Although I predict the Cybertruck, the Plaid Model S, and the Roadster are all going to use the new Roadrunner, the new big cells that Tesla will be making themselves. So maybe they're going to have that line built up to a level that they can support it sooner than people thought. That's probably good news for everybody involved. They've been pretty quiet otherwise. There wasn't really an announcement or reveal. They don't have like the Roadster, like up on their website and anything bold. So I'm not sure, but to me it seems like maybe the Roadster is going to surprise people and be available sooner than we thought.
Well, Elon's always said it's dessert. It's not the main course. And so all the other stuff is going to take priority over it. And I think it was in the Q2 call that he had said something about the Roadster being in 12 to 18 months, which would put the Roadster at the earliest mid-year next year. I think it's most likely going to be the end of the next year. But just like the article, like this email, I got one of these emails, but before this email, I got one that was a little alarming. It just said it was a Tesla paid the $5,000 down payment for I earned a full free Roadster. And so I got an email that said they've put the $5,000 down towards it. And I was supposed to wire them $245,000 by December 10th. And in the email, it had the bank information, the wiring information, all the kind of stuff. And I was like, no. So I started reaching out.
Was this a great uncle of yours from Nigeria, by the way? Because
Yeah, exactly.
I've gotten that one before.
Well, I reached out to I actually reached out to Ben Sullins because I know he's gotten two, and he said, don't worry about it. He got that same email that when it was put into his account, it just automatically triggered it. So that's why I got it. And then a few days later, I got the one that was in the Electrek article, which was I had also earned enough money for 22% off a second Roadster, which would still make it $195,000 out of pocket. So I got a second email and then a third email saying, ignore the first email. And then the second one, you have to let us know if you want the 22% off. So it was.
Yeah, I guess the way it worked was you were actually building up the discount. And when you hit a certain level, it became free. And potentially you basically had 1.73 Roadsters or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say, Matt, my birthday is in March, so just throwing it out there.
Well, the one thing about it though is like you got to think it's free. It's like I still have to pay income tax on this prize, which counts as my income. So it's like they're giving me $250,000 car. I'm gonna have to pay income taxes on $250,000. So it's not free, but I'm not gonna complain too much because it's still an amazing car. I cannot wait to get my hands on. So if they want to give it to me in the middle of next year, I will take it.
Yeah, so it sounds like we need to be keeping our eye out. Maybe they'll have news about deliveries sooner than we think.
Yeah, I hope so.
Which is crazy because Cybertruck, I think, is going to be a little bit delayed potentially. So I don't know how they're going to manage all of it, but
Yeah.
exciting times.
Yep.
What do we got next?
So up next, Toyota announces a new all-electric SUV and says it's their first step for battery electric cars. And this one's interesting to me because it's based on their new, what is it called, the eTinga platform, the eTNGA platform. It's all the car manufacturers are coming out with their own platforms for their EV structures and their battery packs, and this is based on their platform. The thing about Toyota is that they've doubled and tripled down into fuel cells. And so this is their first all-electric SUV that they're bringing to market. And at first blush, you might say, hey, that's great because they're finally doing it. But this SUV is only going to be in the European market, which really kind of makes you feel like this could potentially be just a compliance car because in Europe, they're banning gasoline cars. So this could just be a way for them to satisfy that requirement for Europe. And here in the United States, we don't have something like that yet. So that's maybe why it's not coming here, which really just kind of makes you feel like Toyota still, at least to me, still doesn't get it. It feels like they're still playing the old game and they're still going down fuel cells. A decade ago, 15 years ago, fuel cells looked like they could be the future because battery electric cars were really nowhere yet. Fuel cells were kind of a nice swap from gasoline into something that's cleaner. But battery electric vehicles came on the scene so fast with Tesla, and they have gained so much steam, so much range. Fuel cells' time has passed, and the fact that they're holding on to it and not giving up on it for passenger cars is just so strange to me. And this, while on one side it's good news they're finally releasing an electric vehicle SUV, it's also just they're only doing it halfway. So it's kind of concerning to me a little bit.
Yeah. I thought this was going to be a good news situation where Toyota, who is a really important manufacturer of cars, let's not, mince words, but yeah, the fact that they're only doing it in Europe makes me think compliance car. But, the ID3 was Europe only, and then it was followed up by the ID4 for North America because the European market and the American market are just different. If you were building a platform and you're building an electric car, it is conceivable that you have plans of releasing a car for Europe and then you'll spin off something a little bit different for the American market. European roads are crazy small, and the desires for people and what they're looking for in their car is just different. So I'm not giving up hope yet. I think they might finally figure this out. But part of their problem is in North America, people love Toyota. In the U.S., they sell a ton of them. And that's why I've always mentioned of the big three, think of like Honda, Toyota, and then like VW. Honda and Toyota are going to be the ones that are in trouble because they have a lot of business. They do a lot of sales in North America, and North America is kind of lagging behind a bit, whereas Europe is on the cutting edge of banning these ICE cars. So VW got the message early, and I think they were really got a kick in the butt with Dieselgate. And, they've been, as a result of that, we have Electrify America. They have all these different types of interest in electric vehicles today. So I guess let's be hopeful, and maybe there's some optimism to be had. I'm not really sure. I do. Yeah, the compliance thing does creep up again because there's not really anything else to kind of look at as progress in their front. But let's hope they kill a lot of this investment in hydrogen fuel cells because it hasn't gotten them really anywhere. And I don't think, or at least make a good looking one. How about that? Make an attractive, desirable hydrogen fuel cell car, and then we'll talk. Until then, the Mirai is it's hideous. And have you seen what Tesla's doing? What are you thinking? Anyway, yeah, to me it just seems like a weird kind of a half measure, but let's hope that they are serious.
Yeah. I mean, to push back on one point you made, the United States is all SUVs and trucks. We're huge cars. Where in Europe, they tend to be smaller cars, which is part of why the ID3 was Europe only because it's a smaller kind of hatchback kind of crossover car. But the ID4 is a full-on SUV, which is here. Makes sense. If this is a full-on SUV, why would it not be coming to the United States? That's my one thing of, they're starting with an SUV, so you would think that this would be a prime for the United States, but it's not,
Yeah.
which is
Good
concerning.
point. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe it's a tiny SUV. I don't know. Yeah. Good point.
It could be
I
like
was-
an ID3. It could be a smaller kind of crossover because they haven't
When I was
shown us
in-
what it is yet.
yeah.
So.
when I when I was in Europe, we went to Spain, and I asked for an SUV. I got a Fiat Panda. Do you know what that is?
Those are so small.
It's the worst car I've ever driven. It was like a brand new car with 10,000 miles. Nothing worked. It was terrible, and it was tiny. It was not an SUV. It was like the size of a Honda Fit in America. So maybe that. I don't know. Yeah, good point.
All right, so the next one up is you. So let's take a look
Yes,
at
this is near and dear because I actually follow the company before they kind of shuttered for a while. This is Aptera, and they are unveiling and beginning the process of taking reservations for their vision of the future of kind of a commuting electric vehicle. And looking at this thing, it reminds me of the Elio Motors car. I don't know anybody who's watching. Let me know in the comments if you guys remember Elio Motors. It was just really cool. It was a gas car from 10, 12 years ago, but it would get 85 miles a gallon. And the reason they were able to do that is because the aerodynamics of the car, the drag coefficient, and the frontal area was so tiny that it could deliver triple the efficiency of a gas car. This, with Aptera, is the same story with an electric vehicle. So this car will go 3 times as far as your like Model 3, for example. So you can go 250 miles with just a 25 kilowatt hour battery pack. Or put another way, if you were to go full bore and get a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, you can go 1,000 miles, which is pretty amazing, right? And so that efficiency is all from the look at that thing. It looks like a teardrop. It's just beautiful and designed clearly for optimum efficiency. So the cool thing is charging it will also be quicker. Even if you were to charge it at like a level 2 charger, you'd be charging it 3 times as fast because each kilowatt hour would be 3 times the mileage, right? So charging it is faster, you can travel longer, and there's an optional solar panel package, which again, because of the 3 times range, you remember Elon mentioned for the Cybertruck, 15 miles of range if you have the Cybertruck with the solar panels on it. Well, triple that, 45 miles, and that's what you can get in one day with the Aptera. So we're talking about a car that you might never have to plug in again. You just leave it outside, especially like in San Diego. And for you where you live, Matt, maybe half the year, 8 months out of the year, you might not even have to charge your car. Isn't that pretty crazy?
Yeah, I would love that. I'd be all over that. This car is so fascinating to me because on one hand, it gets me super excited. Here's a car that's pushing the boundaries of what you can do for aerodynamics to really make the motors get the most out of that battery pack. It's just absolutely astounding. And the flip side of it, it looks like a light cycle from Tron. And it's like, to me, it's like, who is the market for this? Because I don't see this being a mainstream car. It's like, I just don't, people think the Cybertruck is divisive. It's like, this is going to be just as divisive. I just don't see this being a mainstream car. But I love seeing how they're pushing the boundaries here and they're doing something different and they're showing you what electric cars are capable of with today's technology, which is just super cool.
Yeah, good point. And you got to remember, so I mentioned this company gave this a try about 12, 15 years ago. It didn't really work out. They were early. The batteries were just too heavy, not as energy dense, and too expensive to really make it feasible. But you can imagine this car would have made a ton more sense back then.
Yeah.
But today we have, a standard range plus Model 3 is about 40,000. This car, if it comes in around 25,000, and those numbers are early, it might creep up a little bit, I'd imagine. So it's not that much more money for like a normal 5-seater sedan. So their time might have kind of closed that window they had. But at the same time, it is a $25,000-ish car, and there will be people for whom it makes sense. I mean, I do think that the number of people commuting will decrease. I don't think we'll ever go back to the level that we did pre-COVID, but there will still be people commuting, and this will be one of the most efficient ways of doing it. So, yeah, it's a mixed feeling. I do think, and also just the safety aspect. I remember I was in a live call. They had a little live Q&A, And most of the questions were like, what happens in a crash or something? It's a fair point. The Model 3 is the safest car you can buy. And now I'm going to give that up to drive this. That might be a tough sell for some people.
Yeah. But 1,000 miles, man. That's incredible.
Yeah, no kidding. It's incredible. And then they did that for a reason. But what's funny is I actually don't know where they put all those batteries. The car is tiny. The floor is very contoured. And you're telling me you're going to put 100 kilowatt hours of batteries in that thing? You know, the Model S, the floor of it without double stacking it, kind of was pushing the limit of that. I don't know where the batteries would go. I kind of think they made that for marketing's sake. Like imagine if we took our batteries and you scaled it to the size of your traditional cars you're buying today, that would go 1,000 miles kind of a thing. I doubt they'd actually ever make it. It just doesn't seem like it would be fun to drive. It would be very heavy and I don't know.
There's something about car design. It's been the same for 100 years. But now that we're going electric, it opens up the possibilities of what you can do with a car because you don't have to have this gigantic engine strapped to the front or the back of the car. And so seeing a car like this, which is so radically different, the Cybertruck, which is so radically different, there's going to be a lot of resistance to too much change too fast because we're so used to what cars are supposed to look like. But in time, it's going to be crazy to think like 30 years from now, 50 years from now, what are cars going to look like? They're going to look radically different from what we see today. They're just going to be a box on wheels. There's not going to be really a front or a back. It's just going to be kind of a thing that you just get in and it takes you where you need to go and you get out. There's something so sci-fi about it that I just absolutely love.
Yeah, Matt, and don't worry, by the way, for your harsh Massachusetts winters, there's an all-wheel drive option where all the wheels are powered. And that wouldn't have been possible before. Like the Elia was a rear-wheel drive because you'd have like a chain. I'm not sure how they had a little maybe to power the rear wheel. But this has in-wheel motors and stuff. To your point about what is possible with EVs. And yeah, I can't wait to see what other ideas emerge. Yeah. The robo-taxi, the idea of a robo-taxi to me, like what would be the perfect robo-taxi car? I think it'd be like, maybe something cut into pieces where you can have different passengers at the same time. They wouldn't even see each other. You'd have your own little private space and each door would open free. I don't know. I think it's just fascinating to think about what the future might hold.
Yeah. Well, the next up is our last story, which is GM reveals a working Hummer EV. It's like they finally...
By the way, we have Matt Farrell to thank for this one because until they heard Vice Versa episode 1 and they heard Matt going on, I think they had no plans of doing this. So Matt, thank you for that.
Yeah. What I love about this is I have to eat a little bit of humble pie because I mean you said that they're good at building cars and they will probably hit their proposed timeline for making this thing. And I just love that GM came out and just released a video showing like, hey, no, this thing works. We got a working prototype now. So it's like, it's great that they finally kind of came out and did this. But it's like, if you were this close to having a working prototype, why didn't you just wait a few months and then just make the announcement now? It's like, you've got it. You should have the announcement right now. But this does give me a lot more hope that this will actually come out next year when they were saying it's going to come out. So bravo to you for calling it out and saying, they'll get this. I think they did.
That's so funny. Maybe LeBron James was busy and they had to like rush it in so he'd have time to record the commercials. Yeah, I don't know. But they're still early. There's a long ways to go. So what you said makes sense. I mean, they're building it now, but I mean, there's miles and miles to go before they're ready to sell this thing. So let's see what happens. But again, this is part of that Ultium battery stack we talked about. It's all kind of connected. GM, I got to tell you, they're impressing me. I really do think they're taking this seriously. And I hope them all the best. I can't wait to see these on the road and actually like in camouflage and stuff. People have seen Cybertrucks on the road already, like a year ago, right? Yeah. So imagine how cool that'll be to see like the EV Hummer out and about and like in some camo. That'll be cool. Yeah.
Well, that was our last story. So we're going to transition now into the Q&A of the show. So if you have thoughts and comments, drop them in the chat right now, and we'll start sounding off.
Mark Lindsay said in motion. Yeah. That was part of why I think Matt was very skeptical because, as exciting as EVs are, you're going to have like pretenders who kind of try to steal some of that spotlight. And yeah, you got to be cautious. But with GM, I kind of figured they'll build this thing. How much will it cost and how many of them, we don't know. But the car is going to be built.
Yep. So 47 Solar said, for $46,000, I'd rather have a Tesla Model 3. And how safe is it with giant SUVs driving around with it? That was about the Aptera. So it's like, I would,
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree with that.
For 46,000, you get the 1,000-mile range, I think.
But with SUVs, his point about how safe is it, like with trucks and SUVs around you, like the back of that car is the teardrop. It's like if somebody hits you from behind, do you just go jacked up on the car? Like, how does it work?
I think it's a question of perspective. If you're coming from a car, you think this thing's crazy and unsafe. But if you come from a motorcycle, you're like, hey, this is kind of cool and warm, you know. So I think it might be a question of perspective. But yeah, that's the fair point for 46,000. And the supercharger network, you can probably get by without the 1,000 miles of range. So Darian asks if we've seen the Lucid Air Dream. I have. We're cutting up the video right now. We had a chance to meet with the chief designer who built the car, who was on the talks, and he kind of went through the entire thing. It is a absolutely gorgeous car. I'm a big fan of Lucid Motors. I think Rivian, Lucid, and Tesla or Rivian, Lucid are the two companies that I think are going to join Tesla as the real like standout winners here with electric vehicles. And it is a beautiful car. The fit and finish and stuff is really nice on it. And I like the detail to the interior materials and stuff. It's quite stunning. Have you seen it yet, Matt?
I have not. I mean, I've seen photos and stuff like that, but I haven't really looked into it too much. I cannot wait to see your video on it.
Yeah. It should be fun. And we got a chance to kind of tour their factory where they're building the prototype cars for testing and stuff. And we're going to be in February going to their plant in Arizona for a little tour, and we'll do videos on that too. But yeah, their factory is ready to rock. We have some other ideas about doing videos on like more about investing, but the Lucid IPO is one of the ones I'm really looking forward to for 2021. Canadian Bernie Bro says, is QuantumScape a mirage? It's a good question. I don't know anybody in the chat if you guys bought QuantumScape right when they were after their reverse merger before they've blown up like 500% or something in the last month. I missed QuantumScape, but I was pretty excited. I thought they might have something. I don't think they're ready with anything. Matt has mentioned he thinks solid state batteries are probably a few years out. But what do you think
they're ways out?
QuantumScape?
It's going to be 5 years before we really start to see them hit the market. QuantumScape is probably 5 to 7 years away on their own. There's questions around it, like how viable their technology. I believe QuantumScape has something. I just don't think it's like going to light the world on fire, because when you look at what they're touting for their energy density and what's going to be able to do, it's like Tesla's going to be able to do the same exact thing with what they announced at Battery Day. So it may not be solid state, but like when you're talking about range, charging rates, it's not that different. Solid state just has the benefit of being safer because it doesn't have a liquid electrolyte, so fires are going to be a lot less common. So it's going to have a better safety, but is it going to be cheaper? Is it going to be like, there's so many questions I have around it. I do think solid state is going to be the future of batteries, but it's going to be a while before they really get here and make a dent. But it's interesting.
Yeah, I think they enable interesting things in terms of chemistry that maybe isn't possible now with like solid lithium and things, lithium metal. But yeah, that's a fair point. We should probably keep an eye on some of these companies. In a future episode, Matt, we should talk about the battery companies like QuantumScape and the recycling companies. That's something I'm deeply interested in. And I know you've done research. So that's why
a lot.
That's why I think you should.
Yeah, I've done a lot of research into recycling. It's pretty cool stuff.
Really cool. One question here from Learning One is, I understand that Tesla chargers are kind of proprietary and that others can't use it. Other people using universal chargers. Yeah, pretty much everybody else is using a universal charger. This again, Matt often makes a comparison between Tesla and Apple. It's the exact same thing. Everybody's on USB-C, and then you got Apple with like Lightning. So it's kind of the same sort of thing. But what's interesting is Aptera could potentially be licensing the right to the supercharger network, which is interesting. Tesla currently doesn't let any other companies use their network, but that might change, especially with cars that don't compete with them. Nobody who's buying the Aptera, to Elon's mind, probably is not buying a Tesla as a result of it. So for that reason, they might. But what's tricky is if you let people use your network, then there's going to be longer lines for your customers to charge. And like in LA, I know like Tesla Joy and some of the other people who live in LA always complain about how long those lines can get. There's a ton of Teslas in LA, and there's a lot of chargers, but they get filled up. So that's always a tricky thing about building out your network.
Craig Cooper said, Matt, make sure you get FSD on that Roadster. Yeah.
I would never do that. If you're letting the car drive itself, like, you're doing it wrong. I don't think you get it.
I was gonna say a Roadster is meant to be driven.
Right. Yeah.
Although I'll probably wrap that car around a telephone pole because it's gonna have too much power for me to be able to handle.
You know, yeah. Well, make sure you invite me before you
Yeah.
What else we got?
David
So it sounds
Darling.
like people do want to talk about recycling companies.
Oh, cool. I was going to say, David Darling said that, do you think we might get a surprise Roadster early, at least next year? I think we might, but it would probably be the very end of the year at the earliest. That's just my take.
Yeah, I think what they could do is use it as like a booster of excitement if they need it, but it will be low volume, I'd imagine, because I think getting Cybertruck up and running is top priority. It's just more important, I think, than anything else right now.
A Canadian Bernie said about the QuantumScape hiding behind JB's reputation. I don't think they are, because JB would not be associated with a company that he doesn't believe in. I mean, he has said openly that they have some technology that's some of the best cutting edge stuff he's seen in years. So it's like, they're not hiding behind him for anything.
I agree. I think JB was influential in getting early funding, in their price where it is today. Like if JB is not a part of that company, I don't think their stock price is where it is today, but that says nothing to the fact that they probably have something very interesting. So when we find out more, we'll do an episode for sure, but it should be interesting.
Yeah, Craig's asking about the Hummer EV weight. I have no idea. That thing probably weighs multiple tons.
When I don't think I ever told you this, Matt, but back in March, I had a little birthday party, and a lot of my friends, it was the last thing we did for the year. No one knew, but my birthday would be the last fun thing a lot of us would do. But I had some of my friends fly in from Houston. One of them was a friend named Robert, who made the electric motorcycle at Fully Charged Live. You probably met him. So we were going to get together and start a series where we were going to convert an old gas car to electric. So we went to these like junkyards, and we were looking at cars to buy for this. So we were looking around. Robert, there he is. Robert's on the call. He just joined. So one of the ideas I wanted to do was like a Range Rover or like a Hummer H1. But Robert had this spreadsheet, and he was like, here's what an H1 weighs with nothing in it. It's like 5,000 pounds. And here's what happens when you add batteries, and here's what happens to the range. And the math was ridiculous. You'd have to add so many batteries, and the car is so unaerodynamic and all other stuff. So the Hummer EV is going to have a little bit of advanced technology in it, maybe some composites or some aluminum or something. But they're going to have to keep that under control somewhat.
Yeah, that's too funny. What about the weight of solid-state batteries? Solid-state batteries are, the way QuantumScape described it was higher energy density per liter. They didn't talk about it as per kilogram, which is what you usually hear, which kind of makes you wonder what's going on. But it should take up less space than a standard battery.
I think the improvement in terms of space is going to be bigger than the improvement in terms of weight, but there should be an improvement on both.
Yes. Which means less of your floor of your car would have to be a battery. It's basically, that's what it would mean, but you wouldn't save that much weight potentially.
Mark says the Bollinger, was it the B1, I think, isn't very aerodynamic at all. That is very true. So they better have a good battery solution for that, because I don't know what kind of ranges they claim. We've done a video on it in the past, but that's the game you're invariably always playing with EVs, is how do you get that range if you're not going to be efficient?
Spencer says, any news about Fiat Chrysler's transition to electric? I haven't heard much. Neither have I. Have you seen or heard much?
I've heard some early kind of rumblings, but yeah, it's early on. They don't really have any sort of a like they haven't announced any kind of a platform. They haven't done any of the sort of stuff that GM has done, for example. And I just never liked that group. Like if there's one group of companies I would never buy a car from, it is Fiat and Chrysler and that whole thing. I just they always make their way to all the most reliable like car lists and stuff. And so I've just never looked into it that much, but maybe with electric vehicles that can change and the quirky styling and stuff can be matched with reliability, which I don't think it ever was in the past. Like those 500s were not reliable cars at all, even though they were kind of quirky and fun for a while. But no, we haven't heard much. If we do, we'll try to cover it in the future.
But if you ask me which company do I think would not survive the transition, it's Fiat Chrysler. It's just,
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah,
yeah,
I'd
they're
agree.
so behind.
Because I mean, if you're not even good at making gas cars, I don't know why people would think you're to be good at making electric cars, right?
Yeah.
Robert says, what about V to G or V to V? So the Lucid Motors will do both. A Lucid Air can charge another Lucid Air, and it can also, I believe, do V to G and charge your house in the event of something. So that's definitely the future. I think Tesla is a little bit more reluctant to allow that, but I think that's going to be the future because again, you've got this huge battery in your garage doing nothing a lot of the day. It could easily be stabilizing the power grid. So let's hope that that does happen.
What's the Tesla stock going to do after the S&P 500? I don't know. It's going to go up. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, the one thing with stock that I think people sometimes don't fully think about is when there's news of something, the stock price is already reflecting that news. So Tesla's ride the last 2 weeks has been all about that. So like if people are thinking, oh, I'm going to buy a stock today, the day before the S&P inclusion, and then tomorrow that's not the case. In fact, sometimes it's the opposite. Like when Apple has an announcement, their stock usually goes down. It's because whatever they announce is not going to live up to the hype of people's expectations. And so that's kind of how it goes. Like Tesla might actually go a little down, but it's still going to be a great buy. But don't think that the day that happens, a switch is going to get flipped or something.
Yeah.
Should come on the EV bubble. We, Matt, I don't know if I told you about this, but I'm starting a little investor investor club series where we're going to talk about some of this stuff.
Oh,
But
cool.
there is a very serious EV bubble, and when I say bubble, I don't mean it in a negative way. Honestly, whenever you have a frontier, like a west, when there's all this excitement, you're gonna have tons of people with money thinking, "I want to cash in. I miss Tesla. Where's the next one?"
Hmm.
So, so there's going to be some bad actors. Nikola comes to mind, but there's going to be tons of good companies too. And it is the future. Imagine from 2020 to 2030, we'll all look back and think about this as one of those golden eras of investing potentially when the world is making this transition. These transitions don't happen all that often.
Hmm.
And we're going to have all kinds of new companies from charging infrastructure, manufacturing, battery, chemistry, EV, full car manufacturing companies that should be very interesting. And we will talk about it a little bit on this channel as well.
It's not even just EVs. We're transitioning energy too. So renewables, it's the same thing. It's like the Industrial Revolution. We're like living through it right now. So it's kind of exciting. Who is this? Who is this? Who is this said, getting Nikola vibes from Arrival minus Trevor seems like a great concept but little substance. I disagree. I have to disagree with that.
What do you think about Arrival?
I am super excited about what they're doing. They seem to really know what they're doing, and they're trying something that nobody else is doing to break into the market in a very unique way. Will they succeed? I have no idea. I don't know if they're going to succeed at it or not, but I don't think they're hot air. Especially since UPS has already bought 10,000 and they're probably going to be buying more. And they're building out their first 2 factories right now. It's like, it's pretty exciting. I love the whole microfactory approach. I actually have a video coming out about it in 2 weeks. Yeah, I have a video coming out in 2 weeks on my channel about the microfactories where I go into detail with it. I talked to who was it that you talked to?
I talked to their chief experience officer.
Yeah. I talked to
about
the CEO, Mike, who's of the automotive. I talked to him in great detail about the microfactories, how they work, why they're doing that concept, the pros and cons of it. It was a really great conversation. So I don't
be
think
sure
I
to
don't
go to
think
Matt's channel if you haven't already and subscribe for that video because I'm waiting for that one as well. And ours should be coming shortly too. Thank you, Craig. Craig watched my interview. Yeah, it was interesting. And so the person I spoke with was more about the experience of it all, which to me just kind of shows you the difference in how people think about, like startups think. Arrival doesn't think about selling cars like GM does or somebody else. So they think about the entire life cycle of the car and the experience of everybody from buying it, using it, charging it, operating it, how it feels to sit in and get up and get out if it's a bus. And so that kind of tech approach to things of the UX design, you'll appreciate that, is really fascinating. And it shows you that's kind of the different stuff that people bring when there's new, fresh ideas and you don't have too much bureaucracy and red tape to cut through.
Yeah. They designed the factories and the cars at the same time. So it's like you couldn't make these vehicles in a different factory because they've been designed as one thing, which is just so fascinating to me.
Thank you, Robert, for the super chat. Yeah, exactly.
Tesla is the next Tesla.
Who said that?
Beach Crow said Tesla is the next Tesla. Tesla is the next Tesla. If you seriously want to talk about that, it's like Tesla is revolutionizing the automotive industry. They're starting to do that with the energy industry too. So it's like, I think the other shoe to drop with them is going to be what they're doing with battery storage for the grid. Their solar roof, all that kind of stuff is yet to come. So they're going to be a juggernaut.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. But really, though, I think it is important that we have the next Teslas. Lucid comes to mind again for me. I'm doing a video that we should be airing shortly about like their secret sauce, right? Without giving too much away, but they're doing some innovative things on the motor side, especially when it comes to like cooling the motor and having a higher voltage architecture, the 800 volt architecture. These are things that Tesla is not doing, and they will do in the future. Like I'm sure the Cybertruck and the Roadster and the Plaid Model S, I'm not sure. I believe those three cars are going to have an 800 volt architecture. So that's what happens when you have innovation and you have. So right now, if your expectation is all the innovation in our lives are going to come from one company under one roof, as amazing as Tesla is, and if there was only one company I could have, it would be Tesla. But I want tons of smart people everywhere to make my life better. And so that's what happens when you have true innovation. Lucid will be a big time player. They mentioned, I had a tour of their factory and they're going to build 3 cars. He didn't tell me what the third was going to be, but we know there's going to be an SUV and a third car vehicle from that same platform. So these companies are interesting and exciting because you got smart people here. Peter Rawlinson, who's the CEO of Lucid, really smart dude. And I'm glad that him and everybody is working on these problems, including QuantumScape and the guys in the chemistry labs. Those guys are going to be the heroes, by the way, of the next 20 years. Yeah. But the more smart people that are doing great work, the better off we're all going to be.
Yeah, well said.
The Cyber Aptera, that'd be cool.
Another company I'm really excited for is Rivian. I mean, Rivian is doing stuff that is so smart. And somebody who asked it, David Darling, thoughts on the Rivian charging network. It's like, I don't want to say anything too much, but I've talked to some people that know some people about that. And it was just one of those, their approach to their charging network, they're not going to be going head to head necessarily with Tesla or EVgo because they're planning on building their charging network as part of like the lifestyle experience of a Rivian. Because you want to go off-roading, but there's no charging network when you're in those areas you're going to be going off-roading. So they're planning on building out like their adventure charging network in locations where you normally would never find one to try to support that lifestyle of that adventurer. And it's like, to me, that is just so freaking smart because you don't have to go head to head with EVgo or Electrify America because they've already got the highways covered. So why waste your time building extra ones there? they want to build it in the places that they don't exist or they would never exist, to try to help their cars be able to do these crazy off-road things that they want them to do. So it's like, I love the way Rivian's thinking about this. It's really clever, very unique. They know their brand, they know their audience. It's going to be really cool to see how they evolve over time.
That's such a good point. One of my friends was telling me they were planning a trip. I think it was to Joshua Tree or National Park, and they had the standard range Model 3 from a couple years ago. And they were telling me how difficult that was to figure out and sort that out. But imagine if companies like Rivian, who are building cars to a different market, now go and put chargers in really cool places that are kind of off the beaten path. Absolutely brilliant, right? By the way, I finally had a chance to watch The Long Way Up. So anybody who's on this call right now, if you guys haven't already watched this, it's on Apple TV Plus. You have to watch this. This is Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman, who hop on a couple of electric Harleys, just cool. And all their support equipment is on 2 electric Rivians. And all this is pre-production. Rivian made like 1 and 2 to go. Yeah, such a cool story. And what's really interesting is now, Matt, maybe we'll talk to our wives. Maybe you and I will do The Long Way Up. We'll ride from Patagonia to LA, because Rivian's already done the hard work of installing like 100 fast charging stations, Yeah. So that's the cool thing when other people with different ideas gets involved. We all benefit. So I've always been very inclusive. There's a lot of people who are very pro Tesla and hate everything else. I've never gotten that, because I want everybody to show me what you got, and I'll choose, and maybe I'll still choose Tesla, but like give me your best offer, your best attempt, and I want to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I'm 100% on that. It'd be like, I love Apple products, but if my only choice was Apple products, I'd be very, very sad. It's like, I want options, because sometimes Apple isn't the right choice. So having more people doing different things, coming at the approach in different ways, we need that. We all need it.
Yeah, by the way, Matt, when we do our Long Way Up, Craig Cooper says, sign me up. So it'll be the 3 of us, apparently. That'll be fun. I think Robert would probably join us, too. Earlier on, I saw a question I wanted to answer. Mark, what's up, Mark? I follow you on Twitter, by the way. So Mark asked, do you foresee the end of manual driving? If so, when? Interestingly, I have, until my Tesla Model 3, every car I've owned, about 8 of them in my 20 years of driving, have been manual transmissions. So to me, the end of the gas car happens to like line up with the end of the manual transmission, which is kind of interesting, because cars nowadays, it's increasingly difficult to find a manual. Everything comes in automatic. BMWs used to always have a good, proper shifting 5 or 6 speed. Now they're grocery getters, and they're not even like performance oriented at all. And a lot of cars, if you want to get like leather seats and stuff, they don't have the stick option. And they're moving towards CVTs, which are the worst. You want to hate driving?
Yes.
Drive a CVT.
Yes.
And then come drive a Tesla, or an electric vehicle, and you'll get why you can't go back. So I will say, Mark, yes. I think the end of manual driving is happening the next 5 years, because it won't make sense to go through all the engineering and how all the logistics of the supply chain and handling 2 different models and different configurations for an increasingly dying off thing, especially when electric vehicles are on the rise.
My wife drives a manual Mazda 3 because she loves manual. And I've told her, it's like, if I get another Tesla, you can have the Model 3. And she's always kind of like, but I like driving manual. I'm like, you're not going to be able to find a manual car in a few years, period. So it's like, you're going to have to pick a car that doesn't have that. Might as well be a Model 3.
Yeah, exactly. So by the way, someone mentioned he thinks he means manual versus autonomous driving.
Okay.
That is a topic for a whole episode, I think, probably. Yeah. What do you think?
In short, manual driving is going to go away. It's going to go away.
Not while there's Tesla Roadsters to be driven. I don't think so.
Weekend driving for fun? Yeah, manual. Okay, for that. But like 99% of driving that's going to happen in who knows how many years, it's like it's going to all be autonomous. Nobody's going to want to drive. Why would you want to drive? It's like you can get in a car, just sit down, look at your phone, do something else, and in 10 minutes you get to your destination, you get out. It's like it's from point A to point B is what most people use cars for. They're not going to want to drive.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as far as timetables and stuff, we shall see. But I think in a future episode, Matt and I are going to talk about all the companies that are tackling the self-driving problem, and there's quite a few of them, and maybe we'll talk more about that there. But the end of manual driving, absolutely, it's going to happen. I think the question really is when. And based on people watching the FSD beta videos from Tesla owners, they're probably thinking it's going to happen exceedingly soon. So we shall see. This is fun, by the way. I got to tell you,
Yeah.
interacting with people like in real time. This is
47 Solar. Anyone want to feed and water their horse? It's basically it. It's like we're watching the slow transition away from that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there was so to that point. I remember I was watching an episode of Now You Know, I think, and they mentioned that Tesla won't even sell cars to people in the future. So imagine a world where Tesla just builds robo taxis. You don't go to Tesla.com and buy a car for yourself at all. And Now You Know, we met them in Fully Charged. They have they have a vision of the future where you won't even own a car. There'll be no reason to, and I gotta say, I still like owning my own car. I think, especially if you live a little bit further away, and potentially with COVID, I think people are going to maybe spread out a little bit more. I think living on top of each other the way we have been, which this move to urbanization might go the other direction. So there might be a reason for owning your own car. But that's probably the more interesting question: is forget manual driving or autonomous. That's not a question. It'll be all manual, just a matter of when. But what about ownership? Do you own your car and you get in, you put your groceries in the seat, and then you go, take me home and sit back and browse Reddit? Or do you not even own your car at all? You don't pay insurance, you don't own it. I think that's an interesting one.
My short answer to that would be yes. It's people are not going to want to spend $40,000 on a car when they could pay a very small fee for a subscription and they can just call a car that will show up at their house within 5 minutes. It's like, because these robotaxis will be everywhere. It's like, you won't have to wait long. Get in a car, you go. You don't have to worry about charging it up. You don't have to worry about taking care of it. No maintenance, no insurance. It's the days of owning a car are going to basically be for enthusiasts. It's basically what it's going to end up being. But we're ways off from that. That's going to be a long way down the path.
Yeah. But what about, see, this is a tough one for me. I get what you're saying as far as, so, okay, I'll put it like this. There is a portion of the population for whom owning a car is just cost prohibitive. And it's not good for them. They shouldn't own a car. They should save that money, invest it, save it, do something else with it. There's also a subset of people for whom a car and all of its cost is not really factoring large on their budget. And for whom having the comfort of, I can leave my laptop and my gym clothes in my trunk, and I have like a mobile home with me, a portable like home, if you will, on the road. And if you have kids, I'm looking if anyone mentioned that yet in the chat. But if you have kids, car seats and stuff, think about the logistics of all of that. If I called a ride-hailing company, by the way, when we do Uber, in San Diego at least, I think I heard New York has it, but here in San Diego, you don't have a child car seat option. So we can't even Uber to the airport if we wanted to, because there's no way for our kids to have a ride. So how does that look? And if you're going to put those in the trunk, kids' car seats are massive. There's nothing bigger in the world than a kid's car seat. It's ridiculous. My kids are 20 pounds, and yet the car seats are, But where do they go if you're not using them? How does that work? There's challenges, right? I mean, there's reasons for why you want to own your own car. But I get it. I don't know. It should be a fun topic for another day.
Yeah.
Hugh Waller says the Fiat 500e is really fun. Isn't that interesting? The 500 is a car I wouldn't even look at with with any interest. But the 500e, it's light and zippy, and it doesn't have the best range. It was kind of a compliance car, but it's still fun. It's kind of like Fiat tried not to make it good, and it was still good, which is funny, right? From a company that is not good at making cars. So, I agree.
Well, we probably should be wrapping this up right now. So you have anything else you want to say before we call it?
No, thank you guys for watching. We have hit 140 people watching live, which is growth from last week.
Yeah.
This is the show. We have a podcast as well, and we go live every Thursday at 5:00 Pacific time.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody. And make sure you check out viceversa.show if you want to listen to the audio podcast, and subscribe and hit that notification bell. But I'm assuming most of you guys who are watching it right now already are, because you're here. And thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.